It's Tuesday. That means we need to look at the waiver wire, and we got a lot of running backs to look at. We did not see many injuries at the running back position on Sunday, and that means we are bare bones at the running back position. We're going to be looking at a lot of handcuffs, a lot of stashes at the running back spot, but a lot of these guys you need to look at because you got to pick a guy up and you want to see what you want to do for the rest of the season at the running back position. But before we dig in and look at these running backs, you need to click that subscribe button right now. This is the only YouTube channel out there that goes 20 plus deep at wide receiver, running back, going deep at quarterback and tight end, covering the waiver wire every single day throughout the week, doing deep dives on these players, on multiple different trending players every week. On top of that, using these videos to creatively help you set your lineups. It's all right here. Click that button. Stop missing out. Ric Flair's watching. Do not disappoint him. And we're going to start things off with JaMycal Hasty. And he had a good week last week with 15.7 PPR fantasy points. Used a lot in the passing game, got 5 targets, ran 14 routes, but it was a 33% route participation rate. We're watching Antonio Gibson in this offense because if Hasty's out there, he's going to get some run. But when I look at Hasty, I look at him as a player that you're putting in if you're hurting, and you're hurting to the point you need to make that gamble, and you're looking at Hasty saying, what the heck, he's running routes, maybe I catch a few balls, and maybe I cross the goal line. Jaylen Warren, we've been talking about him for the last week and a half or so, but if you were looking to draft him about 2 months ago, around the 10th round of your drafts, depending on what type of format you were playing on, you better just pick him up. He's starting to get more work. He got 51% of the snaps last week compared to 37 the week prior. Getting used in the passing game. He's starting to steal some of Najee Harris's passing snaps and his routes ran. That being said, we're going to see Jaylen Warren get more work going forward. He's going to start scoring more fantasy points. He's going to start getting more opportunity. We got the Giants this week. That could lead to some opportunity for Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren is in an offense here that is starting to emerge with Russell Wilson. Everybody saw that. And he's sitting there on waivers in a lot of leagues. You may want to pick him up. Tyler Allgeier is the top tier handcuff. Bijan Robinson is the man. But if something happens to Bijan Robinson, we know without a shadow of a doubt, he's going to get the work. He's going to get the touches. He's going to get the opportunity. You need to be looking at Tyler Allgeier. A very underrated handcuff in this offense because we're looking at some of the shinier handcuffs from the rookie class, some of those upside plays. But Tyler Allgeier, you know he's going to get the work. You know he's going to get the goal line looks. And at that, if you're hurting and you need to use your handcuff as a start, he could surprise you with some production. We saw it a couple times this season. Kimani Vidal's just an upside play. He's a stash play with tons of upside. J.K. Dobbins is getting the work. But the thing is, J.K. Dobbins, come back from an Achilles injury, just getting pounded up the gut a lot. The Chargers have a slow, methodical offense. They want to use their running backs. He could splash on any given Sunday. And also, Dobbins is getting so much work that could run bad for him and run good for Vidal going forward. So this could be a good stash option for you in fantasy football. Ray Davis should be rostered, but he might get returned to the waiver wire if the manager in your league saw that he's sharing snaps with James Cook. 5 carries, 41 yards, and a touchdown. Very good 1B running back in this offense. Should be productive throughout the season. Look for him. Braelon Allen has not been productive for a very long time. But it does not matter. If Breece Hall goes out, he's going to get a lot of workload. He's going to be using the passing game. He's had games where he ran a lot of routes. He had games where he saw targets. And with that, no, he could be an RB1 if something does happen to Breece Hall later on down the road. Roschon Johnson's been getting a little bit of work, but he has not been sexy, but he's getting work in the passing game, getting some opportunities. If you're really hurting at running back, maybe if you're in a 14-team league or something like that, you may be more apt to look at him. I do not look at him as a premier handcuff, but he is a guy to gamble with from week to week, or a guy to look at, especially if something happens to DeAndre Swift, because he is getting work. It is steady, but not enough to to be consistent in fantasy football. Trey Benson was active on Monday night, but he was dealing with an illness, so he didn't get much playing time. But the thing about Trey Benson, we got that 4.3 speed. We're a third-round pick. We're an upside gamble, so that's something you may want to look at if something happens to James Conner. James Conner is a monster, and sometimes those monster running backs, like all running backs, they tend to get hurt. So that's another handcuff to look at. But don't forget about Emari Demercado. When James Conner went out in week 6 with that ankle injury while getting it taped up, those two running backs split up the workload. Demercado got a lot of work in the passing game. That's something to pay attention to going forward. It could be a split between those two running backs. And how I see it is Demercado is getting the money touches and the passing routes and the targets. And you're seeing Trey Benson as the upside flyer due to the size-adjusted athleticism and him getting touches earlier in the season. Tyler Goodson, if Jonathan Taylor's out, you may want to look at him. However, you're not trusting the Colts. You're not trusting Tyler Johnson, but the work rate is ramping up over the last 3 weeks. But again, Jonathan Taylor has to be out for you to make that gamble. Justice Hill is a running back to put into your lineups. If the Ravens are playing a matchup where the over-under is pushing 50 and you're expecting it to be high scoring, especially if they're going up against a defense that's a little bit stout against the pass and things have to get creative in the passing game, just really objectively think through that matchup. He's not a guy you want to start every week, but think about last night against Tampa Bay. That was a high-scoring game, 70-some points scored. You knew they were going to have to throw the ball. You knew they had to be somewhat creative because Tampa Bay is very creative with how they get after the quarterback. Justice Hill's that type of player. We scored that touchdown. That buoyed our production, but you got to be on the field. You got to be getting snaps for you to score those touchdowns. Sean Tucker is in a weird situation. This is possibly one of the weirdest situations for running backs in all of football. You have a three-headed monster situation here. Very rare we get to evaluate anything like this, so I'm kind of geeking out about it. But what I think about this backfield, it's a pick 'em week to week. And now that we got Godwin and Mike Evans out, they're probably going to lead more on Rachaad White and Bucky Irving, more for the passing game, more for those routes. But Sean Tucker's still going to be a thorn in the side. He's still going to get that opportunity. He ran on 20% of the snaps last night. He will be getting opportunities to score fantasy points. I think Bucky Irving, Rachaad White will get more of those money touches. You're probably going to be more apt to lean towards them. I think Sean Tucker is a guy you may want to look at rostering, but you don't have to. But he's also a guy that you probably want some chips on if one of those two running backs break, or if the game script is favorable, if Tampa Bay's up and they're ahead, which might not be as likely now with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin hurts. But when you're looking at these running backs, it's a pick 'em week to week. You really got to identify the matchup. If it's a higher scoring game and Tampa Bay's going to be playing from behind, which might be more apt to happen now, then you may want Rachaad White and Bucky Irving more. And you're probably going to want them more overall. But if Tampa Bay's going to be ahead, Sean Tucker might surprise you. He is going to get enough workload in games to be fantasy viable and might be able to sneak production because he almost had enough workload here to pop something off. Usually around 10 opportunities is enough to surprise you, but he's the RB3 right now if you're looking at fantasy rankings out of this backfield. Tyrone Tracy, if he get dropped, pick him up. He's a good stash and hold. He should be rostered, but there's going to be a lot of leagues dropping him because he scored 6 fantasy points. He's sharing the backfield with Devin Singletary. We're running a lot of routes. One of the top running backs in the NFL in routes ran with 27 to 67.5 route participation rate. That's what you want to see out of your running backs, especially running backs who used to have been a wide receiver back in the day. This is a running back that's very explosive and only needs a few touches for him to go off. Isaac Guerendo only needs a few touches to go off. He's a shotgun running back. He's a guy that just needs an open crease and he's gone to house it. You're looking at him as a stash for Jordan Mason if something happens to him because this offensive line gets good pushback. He's running like he's shot out of a cannon. If that crease is there, you'd know he's as good as gone with that 4.3 speed at 220-some pounds. Isaac Guerendo is a guy to look at. Jaylen Wright's in a good situation here. The touches, the snaps are starting to mount up. Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane's already rostered, so you're not really looking at them off the waiver wire, but you're looking at Jaylen Wright because Tua's coming back. This offense is going to be more efficient. Jaylen Wright's back to stash status. He's still there, even with the woeful Week 7 output. We got Arizona coming up. Wright's a guy to hold on to as a gamble. Dearness Johnson. So if you're needing touches, if you're needing targets and routes, here you go. He's going to get you opportunity in that department as long as ETN's out. and you're just going to throw him in your lineups and pray to the fantasy football gods. But he is going to get you workload. He is going to get you those opportunities. He scored 10 fantasy points last week. You're like, I don't care. Somebody else who's decimated would love that. So be grateful he gave you 10 fantasy points. But Dearness Johnson, just going to be getting touches and opportunities. If you need it, go ahead and get it. It's going to be right there. Blake Corum is a stash, and you need to be watching Kyren Williams because they're still giving him way too many touches. This is not a Kyren Williams thing. This is not a Blake Corum thing. This is a McVay thing because he needs to stop micromanaging this backfield because Kyren Williams needs to be fresh for the back end of the season. He sure does, and he needs to be able to handle the rock more effectively down the stretch for this team. Blake Corum could just walk into opportunities to do that, so he's a big-time stash right now because Kyren Williams is getting way too many snaps. More snaps than any other running back in the National Football League, 55-plus snaps per game. He had, 21 touches on Sunday. The workload's immense. It's consistent. It's great for fantasy football. I love him on my fantasy teams. I love what we're getting at him, but it's not a Kyren Williams thing. It's a McVay thing, and he's got to stop micromanaging. Give Blake Corum, Ronnie Rivers a couple extra snaps, a couple extra touches. Allow him to be fresh for later on down the road. Blake Corum, if that twig snaps because they're putting pressure on the twig, Blake Corum could be getting some opportunities. Kendre Miller's a big-time stash play. Traditional redraft might be hard for you, but if you're in a 14-teamer, 16-teamer, you better be rostered. There's a lot of upside here. Alvin Kamara's the dude, but again, running backs are going to running back, and that means a lot of them get hurt. Kendre Miller's got a lot of pop in the step. He's very explosive, big-time prospect, third-round pick from 2023, starting to get some work. Pay attention to him. Alexander Mattison, if he's somehow still on waivers, just get him. He's getting work. He's getting an opportunity. He's scoring enough fantasy points to make you look his way. He is a safe get. If you're looking for a safe get off the waiver wire, it's him. He's getting work. He's getting opportunities. He's running routes. It's all there. Alexander Mattison, not going to be a sexy guy to win your league. He's not that type of player, but he's going to get you production. He's going to get you the opportunities to get you there. Jeremy McNichols, if you're hurting that bad, yes. If you're in a 16-teamer, okay. 18-teamer, okay. If you're hurting that bad, okay. But I probably just talked about 10 other running backs or so that I would rather have. Pierre Strong ran a lot of routes, and this was due to game script, but he ran a lot of routes. Nick Chubb is back, but he ran a lot of routes, and that's a huge indicator for these running backs who are under the radar here. He's got some speed to burn. If he catches a few checkdowns in any given game, you may be looking at him more for daily fantasy football as that cheap free square that you're going to gamble on a couple lineups, and that's more for tournaments, not cash game. That's more strategy that we have to peel back. But on this day, Pierre Strong, if you're in a 16-plus teamer, and if you're looking for a running back that has any type of pulse, he ran a lot of routes. Maybe that can help you out. Maybe you can luck into some fantasy points due to that. But he's getting work in the passing game. You may want to look at that if you're in a deeper league. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Which running back you getting this week? I want to hear about it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. It's right there. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.